Welcome to Boxing During Dinner, and as you can see, David did not kill me last week. He was just talking mad smack.
Welcome back, brother.
I'm back, and we're back here at Alex's house. Had to change the venue because of some, stuff that happens amongst family.
Life happens.
Life happens, exactly. We're here at Alex's house, the original Boxing During Dinner home. We don't count that old apartment of mine.
Nope.
And David, last week, obviously, you mentioned the passing of Omar Henry. I didn't get a chance to say some words, but Omar was a character, and I would always say he was the guy with the least amount of fights, who was a superstar, who had really never fought anyone, because on Twitter he was all over the place. He had celebrities following him. He had girls fighting over him on Twitter. Yeah. I mean, this guy was a character, and a lot of people were, you were either very receptive of him or afraid of him or didn't know what to think of him. He was kind of all over the place and crazy, and even when he first got sick with the gallbladder stones and he had to postpone the fight, a lot of people were skeptical of. What did I say? Skeptical.
It's the right word.
I thought I mispronounced for some reason, but a lot of people didn't believe him initially, and that just goes to the type of person he was. He was a guy who he liked the limelight, he liked the attention, but you know what? He was a fighter, and he wasn't gonna be a guy that was gonna quit on a fight because of some small injury. And look what it was stage 4 cancer, and he ends up passing away. So it's sad that Omar Henry's gone, but for living such a short life and having that little amount of fights, he sure leaves a legacy in boxing, if you could say that. More outside the ring than inside the ring, but
sure. And it's he was a flashy persona, but there was a difference. It was never an affront to anybody. He never was a divisive figure. At least in my estimation, he was somebody who tried to rile people up, and just for the sake of entertainment value more than anything. But whereas a lot of modern fighters will use other opponents as a means to kind of put themselves up, Omar Henry was posturing for bigger fights and things like that, but it wasn't in the same way that a lot of guys will cut others down by trash talking and stuff. That wasn't really his style. But
so it happened more than a week ago. Rest in peace, Omar. And one guy that I used to spar with, Floyd Mayweather Jr. He was in his camp for his last couple of fights. Who is he gonna fight on May 4th? The name Devin Alexander keeps on coming up.
From Floyd's Twitter account, nevertheless.
Right. He's tweeting that Devin Alexander's a front runner. Yeah, he's a front runner if you want to put half the arena to sleep. On May the 4th, it's Cinco de Mayo weekend, which he's named Cinco de Mayweather. You got to fight a Mexican opponent, or at least a high caliber opponent. Floyd Mayweather knows what he's doing. At the end of the day, I don't think he's gonna fight Devin Alexander. I think it'll be Robert Guerrero. Robert Guerrero is gonna put up a better fight. It's gonna be in his face. He's the bigger threat of the two fighters. I doubt that he'll pick Devin Alexander, a guy whom a lot of the networks don't even like putting on because he's not an exciting fighter. He's a good fighter, but what Devin Alexander are we gonna get? And what you're gonna get in Devin Alexander? He's a boxer. So is Floyd Mayweather. You're gonna put a boxer against a boxer. It's gonna be a pretty boring fight if it happens.
And neither one of them is Mexican. I believe that Floyd Mayweather is essentially trying to tell people in as bold a way as possible, I am still in charge. Anybody who thinks that Robert Guerrero is the reason for this stalling, he essentially wanted to reassert his position of dominance. I think,
right,
to let people know he's the one calling the shots, not Robert Guerrero, not anybody else, not Golden Boy, Floyd Mayweather. I agree that Floyd Mayweather would have a much easier time with Devin Alexander than he would with Guerrero. And maybe this is an interesting subject since there's not a ton else to talk about. I think if you put Devin Alexander in with Guerrero, that's a much different fight.
It is a different fight, but in Guerrero you have a guy who's going to come forward.
Right.
So it'll be a completely different fight.
Exactly. And as a Mexican, you need a Mexican as the B-side of a fight with Floyd Mayweather. You can't have the main event on Cinco de Mayo weekend be two Black American fighters.
So yeah, David, Canelo Alvarez will be the co-main event that night. But what if Canelo Alvarez gets injured during training camp? Then there's no Mexican on Cinco de Mayo weekend in Las Vegas. You need a Mexican fighter. Robert Guerrero, being the Mexican American, needs to be the opponent for Floyd Mayweather. And even Richard Schaefer was saying it's not going to be Devin Alexander. He knows what it takes to sell a pay-per-view card, to sell tickets. He's as much in charge as Mayweather wants to be, he's the fighter. And you got money promotions or whatever, but in reality he's not doing the business. It's Golden Boy, it's Richard Schaefer, and he knows what it takes to put a pay-per-view together. At the end of the day, I think it's going to be Robert Guerrero with Canelo fighting either Angulo or Cotto on the undercard. I don't think it's going to be Austin Trout. And Canelo could say a billion times it's going to be Austin Trout. They could print out a poster with both their pictures, them facing off each other. They're going to go to the press conference. I'm still not going to believe it until they fight, because I don't think Canelo's camp is that stupid to put him in against a guy who's a big threat. I mean, I'm not saying Canelo won't beat Austin Trout. He very well might. I mean, he's a really good fighter. But Austin Trout is a crafty fighter. He's a boxer. He's a difficult guy to fight. And we saw when Miguel Cotto was frustrated for the better part of that fight against Austin Trout.
I am of the selection of people who do believe that Austin Trout is going to be the opponent. I think there's no reason to believe that Miguel Cotto will be that opponent. Miguel Cotto himself has said he will not be the opponent. Canelo Alvarez has said he won't be the opponent. I think
Miguel Cotto said it like that. Miguel Cotto will not be the opponent.
Miguel Cotto says that Miguel Cotto will not be the opponent.
Exactly.
It's not going to be him. I would be really surprised. I think Angulo is a last resort. I really think that Golden Boy is ready to put Austin Trout in with Canelo because they believe Canelo needs a legitimate risk. And I think, it's interesting because I think Austin Trout has all of the tools to beat Canelo. I don't know if he does, but I'm willing to pick him if I had to go on this.
I'd probably pick him as well if that fight is signed, which is, it's the crazy part of putting him in against Canelo. Especially since Canelo's saying, no matter what happens on September 17th, I need to fight Floyd Mayweather. If he loses to Austin Trout, it's kind of hard to sell that fight.
Sure it is. But another thing to the Alfredo Angulo fight, Angulo has also gone on record as saying, I have not been offered the Canelo fight, and I do not believe that I will be offered the Canelo fight. These guys absolutely would want their name in the press if they even thought it was a possibility. I tend to think that because there hasn't been many rumblings about that one, that's the fight that's actually probably a lot closer to being done. I would actually venture to say that Mayweather-Guerrero is less of a done deal than Trout versus Canelo is. Do I have reason to believe that that's actually true? Well, we've seen almost every single fight that was supposed to happen this year
it's been canceled.
Be canceled or
like right
changed
today, which is Monday. Jason Velez just pulled out of his fight with
Ponce de
Leon. And even if Angulo doesn't become the opponent for Canelo Alvarez, I do want to see Alfredo Angulo on that card. He's a Mexican. We know the struggles that he went through outside the ring to get back in the ring, and we've seen him fight a couple of times since he got out of the detention center. And he's a hard hitter. He's a guy that people like to watch fight. And put him in against anyone there. Against a 147 fight against Marcos Bay. No, that won't happen.
It would be great.
But that'd be great. But Alfredo Angulo should definitely be on that card. But yeah, that May 4th card, I just wanted to get signed already. I mean, it's
the only one we're looking forward to at this point.
Exactly. There's nothing else.
There is one other fight signed today, very, very recently, in the past couple hours at least. By the time you see it, it'll be real news. Donaire versus Rigondeaux has been signed. Guillermo Rigondeaux signed his contract apparently this afternoon, and finally, after a few days of posturing about it, we'll go ahead and I want to say that fight date is in April 27th.
I don't know. It'll be a pay-per-view card. I certainly don't think so. It'll probably be on HBO.
Yeah.
But that is a very interesting fight. Rigondeaux is a very hard hitter who doesn't believe he's a hard hitter because he's had 8,000 amateur fights and he fights at times like an amateur still. But he can make it interesting against Nonito Donaire. At the end of the day, I think Donaire will win that fight. But Robert Marroquin almost dropped Rigondeaux twice. In that last fight, he hurt him on a couple of occasions. Donaire would probably knock him out if he lands the same shots, but it'll be an interesting fight.
Here's what's a compelling storyline here is that our biggest knock on Nonito Donaire in many of his fights, up until very recently, was that he would have mental lapses. I don't think that Rigondeaux is the guy he can have those types of mistakes against. If Donaire, and Rigondeaux very well will come in a defensive stance and probably not make things very interesting for a while. If Donaire gets careless, Rigondeaux has the power, like you said. I think it was Ramos who was for whatever reason, the champion at the time, that Rigondeaux dropped on a body shot that took the wind out of the room, right across the ribs. Donaire is absolutely susceptible as just anybody else to get hit by a hard, clean punch.
Absolutely.
And Rigondeaux is as talented a fighter in the entire sport. The knock on him is that he boxes too much. He doesn't use the power that he has to his advantage. And maybe another even knock on his style is that there's talks that he's going to train with Pedro Diaz, who most recently was known as the trainer who led Miguel Cotto to a win over Antonio Margarito. He's actually trained Cotto in his last 3 fights.
Yeah, and he actually already started doing some work with Diaz.
Right.
How that would help him, I don't know, because Diaz comes from that Cuban amateur school, and I don't think that's going to help him. And I think I've said it on the show before. Rigondeaux, when he was being trained by Freddie Roach, he fought Adolfo Landeros down here in Nova Southeastern University. Killed him with one shot. I remember asking Freddie Roach, how's his punching power? Because I'm of the opinion that he hits harder than a lot of people.
I remember this. Go ahead.
And Freddie Roach turns to me and he said, no, you're absolutely right. He's one of the hardest hitters I've trained. Except he's been an amateur so long, he's still having a hard time adapting. Freddie told me he would come around and make him into a power puncher. Obviously, one fight later, Freddie Roach wasn't his trainer anymore, and it goes back to my problem with I'm a Cuban American and I have a big beef with a lot of the Cuban fighters. Not personally because I like them all. They're very nice guys, the ones that I've met and speak to on occasion. But they have this problem that they think that they know because they were stars in Cuba and they were from this amateur program and they've won gold medals. They think they're a bigger star than anybody else, and whatever they do is right and whatever they do is wrong.
Everything's better in Cuba, not even just for the boxers, but for a lot of people.
So they go changing all these trainers, and then they revert back to the trainers from Cuba, and they don't have the success that they should have in the United States. There's fighters like Gamboa that's going to be a star regardless of where he is.
But it's interesting, you bring that point up. All of these guys, the Erislandy Laras, the Guillermo Rigondeaux, those are two of the prime examples of extremely talented fighters who are fighting a very boring boxer's style when they have the skill set to do just about anything they want in the ring. And then there's a guy like Gamboa who's strictly relying on his athleticism and power and not being a traditional Cuban-style boxer. It's just mind-blowing that there hasn't been anybody in the middle.
Right, and then you have Gamboa. He's the one on the pay-per-view cards. He's the one headlining HBO shows. While Rigondeaux, the networks are afraid of the guy. They don't want to put him on. But the best thing this weekend was the Grammys. Did you see the pair of tits on Katy Perry? Jesus Christ, man.
I don't know what
I was with Alex at work. We were watching and I will admit we were watching this E! News red carpet. And Katy Perry comes out. Like our whole office it was just like a big pause. It was I stopped breathing. He had to resuscitate me, and Katy Perry, my God, he kept on putting her every 2 seconds. They would cut to a shot of Beyonce, and then all of a sudden go back to Katy Perry. It was like Ross the Intern, back to Katy Perry. Ryan Seacrest, back to Katy Perry. They would just go back to Katy Perry. She looked ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, dude.
I've noticed one of the things I just don't like about all these awards shows is people are always on Twitter and Facebook talking about these awards shows. Oh, did you see so-and-so's dress? Yeah, all the people reading it are all watching the exact same thing as you. Tell me something I don't know. Show me pictures of Katy Perry's assets.
Right, and the people that'll read your tweet about the event that aren't watching it aren't going to give a crap about your tweet.
Yeah.
But, people are tweeting now for whatever reason.
I mean, who am I kidding? All the stuff I put on Facebook, people don't really care about either. So.
The 10. What's your
10 Phases of Dating?
Give a plug to your book.
I'm writing a book called 10 Phases of Dating, and thank you to my friends, very few who probably watch boxing during dinner, but helped me fund completely my Kickstarter campaign, which is basically a way for me to get people to contribute to help pay the fees related to the book. The goal was $2,500, and it finished today at just over $2,700. So that project will be moving forward, and hopefully it'll be good to put money towards the ad budget, promotional, editing, stuff like that. I'm very excited.
and we'll put it into this because Alex is gonna kill us.
Thanks, Armando.
But Ramiro Olivares, who's on Twitter, very funny guy and a boxing fan, he said this week, he posted a picture of Zoolander, and he said that was Sergio Martinez. And I said, how funny would it be if Golovkin would be named Hansel?
Hansel versus
Hansel
Zoolander.
versus Zoolander.
Let's make it happen by the end of 2013.